What's up, everybody? Modern Maker Podcast is a podcast that I've listened to since the first episode a couple months ago, and they announced that they were going to be doing a challenge called the 2x4 Challenge. Since I've made a lot out of 2x4s in the past, pretty farmhouse rustic style stuff, I decided to take a note from the podcast and stretch my boundaries and go a little modern this time, so hope you enjoy it. Now, at the beginning of this video, I'm breaking down the two 2x4s. I cut them where I had two 5-foot sections and two 3-foot sections. I will use the 5-foot sections for the legs and the 3-foot sections for the lampshade. First up, I decided to just cut off the rounded edges. It makes it look a lot cleaner when you're working with 2x4s to take those off. The boards I had were pretty straight, so I didn't even use the joiner. I just used the table saw. I ended up splitting them in half so that I would have squares to use for the tripod legs, and a couple other things that we'll get to later. But I also decided to split one of those squares down the middle. This lamp is loosely based on a lamp that I saw at a store, and something I didn't like about it was the cord dangling down from the middle where the tripod legs came together. So I decided to cut a dado, as you'll see here, which is just a little groove that's not all the way through the wood, that I would then take and glue the piece back together so that you couldn't see the cord. So it's basically running up the leg so that you don't see the cord except for coming out the bottom of the foot. So you see me cleaning up that groove here, then I'll glue the two sides back together, and we'll have a hole that the cord can slide into. Now that was done, I took one of the leftover pieces and cut it into some little sections to basically make some 4x4 stock like you'd get at the store. I decided to do this to kind of be the middle section where the tripod would come together and something that I could attach the lampshade to. So you see me gluing it up here, and then I went ahead and turned it on the lathe. It's nothing fancy because it's not going to be seen, but I did want it to, I did want it to look nice anyway, just because I really like turning stuff, and I figured it'd be cool to have a few skills used in this video to kind of showcase the things that I enjoy. Now, if you watched one of my earlier videos about making a little slab chunk lamp, I did the same technique here. I drilled a hole through the top and the bottom. That way I could kind of have a visual guide to push the wire through, because I started pushing it through the side hole there. At the bottom I could put a chisel up in there and kind of push it through the top. Now you see me running the cord up the leg and through the little turned piece right there. You see it coming out the top. Next up was the lampshade. I decided to resaw the 3-foot sections that I had so that I would end up with some 3/4 inch thick ish lumber, and then glue those together on end to start with my lampshade process. I decided to do kerf bending. I watched a video recently from Johnny Brook Crafted Workshop about his mid-century modern end tables or side tables, and he bent the corners, and I thought it was a really cool technique. Also watched a couple of Jimmy DiResta videos about it, and it stuck out to me that would be a really cool thing to do for this project. So I decided to give it a shot. Now, those guys are professionals and are really good at it. I am not. This was actually my second attempt at a lampshade. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw my failed attempt at first. You see a little piece of walnut there on my sled. That's actually set at an angle. That was a tip I picked up from Jimmy DiResta's video about this. It makes it cut at an angle so that it makes it really flexible. You flip it over, do the other side. However, it makes it flexible, but soft wood is not really the strongest, and I think I cut it a little bit too thin, and I had a little breaking, so I thought it was no big deal, just super glue it back together. Only problem was, just about every time I tried to glue the pieces together, it would break. And this happened over and over and over again. And it was really hard not to be visibly frustrated. But I just kept persevering through it and eventually thought of another way to do it. I took the pieces that I had ripped off the edge when I was first squaring up the boards that were like a 1/16 of an inch thick. and I glued those to the top and bottom to basically give it a brace for when I bent it, so that it wouldn't come apart, and even if it cracked, it would still stay in place, and it would just be this really thin slatted look. So that actually ended up working, which was really satisfying. Now I also did glue a couple vertical pieces in there, just kind of to give it more glue surface, and then I took a strap clamp, which was a revelation when I saw it sitting on a shelf. To use that, it would just be a really good thing to hold it in place while I was gluing everything up. Now I thought about this last step for probably a week. I just sat on the project, didn't do anything, trying to figure out how to attach the lampshade to the tripod base, and eventually settled on making an X with half lap joints, which is what I'm cutting here, that would sit horizontally. I'd glue some vertical pieces and screw some vertical pieces on the side that would glue to the lampshade itself, and that would hopefully be enough that I could attach to the tripod base. And as you can see here, that's what I ended up doing. I put some glue on the outside of that, got the strap clamp again and tightened everything down, and it actually worked. I put some Minwax provincial stain on the legs and left the top unfinished. I like that contrast. I really like everything about this lamp. It's what I wanted it to look like. I wish the lampshade were a little bit bigger. I think the proportions are a little bit off, but all things considered, really happy with how it turned out. And finally, just wired it up. Nothing complicated there, just follow directions. This was a really fun project to make. It was fun to stretch my boundaries. Thanks to Ben Ueda, Mike Montgomery, and Chris Salamone of the Modern Maker podcast for putting it on. It's a great idea. Hopefully there'll be more challenges in the future, and I couldn't have been more happy to be a part of it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, consider sharing it, maybe even subscribe. I'd love to have you along. I hope to be producing a lot more content coming up, and it should be fun. Thanks.